think we have a choice right now to choose a future where we, so to speak, have humans at the helm of that transformation.
We're not training everyone to be AI engineers, but there's so much about this technology that is accessible. Things are being designed by humans. They are things that humans are making choices about. So be part of that. Get both the benefits, but also inform those guardrails. Hello, and welcome to AI with GennAI. I'm your host, Jen Gennai, and today I'm honored to welcome Paula Goldman. Paula Goldman is Salesforce's first ever Chief Ethical and Humane Use Officer and an Executive VP of Product, leading their efforts in building and deploying trustworthy technology. Prior to Salesforce, Paula was VP and head of the Tech and Society Solutions Lab, as well as VP of Impact Investing at Omidyar Network, an investment firm founded by eBay founder Pierre Omidyar. Paula was a member of the US National AI Advisory Committee, established by Congress to advise the president, where she chaired the Generative AI Working Group. She was also a fellow at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business and earned her PhD at Harvard. As an entrepreneur and investor, she's lived and worked across multiple countries, including India, Sri Lanka, Bosnia, and the UK. So I'm delighted we've been able to pin her down and welcome here today. Paula, delighted to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Paula, we just heard your amazing biography there of all the work that you've done, all the impact investing, how you've advised startups, where you've lived across your life. But tell us a little bit more about what's behind the bio. What really led to you focusing on essentially a human-centered and ethical approach to technology development?
Yeah, if I had to simplify the story, I would say two things. One, growing up, my mom was really involved in technology, and I grew up in a family deeply influenced by histories of immigration. And my mom always said to me, technology can be a great equalizer. It can really extend opportunity. And I took that very seriously. So early in my career, I worked on impact investing, technology investing in companies that were meant to extend opportunity. So things like microcredit and alternative forms of access to finance, alternative forms of access to educational materials, and so on. At the end of that journey, and I was working with Pierre Omidyar, an eBay founder at Omidyar Network, we sort of looked up and we said to ourselves, AI and technology are extremely powerful. And not only can they open up opportunity, but they also need guardrails to make sure that we have them in service of people. So it's really kind of two sides of the same coin. It's like if you design products intentionally, not only can you avoid harm, but you can open up incredible opportunity. And that's really the motivation, the through line of my career.
Paula, thanks for sharing about the personal drive as well as that early career drive with the Omidyar Network, about understanding how AI has an impact on humans and society more broadly, and taking that pause to really understand the implications and recognizing that these massive technologies or massive opportunities of AI can have also an equally massive impact on people's lives. So that leads us then to considering our standard T3 trio of questions, which really try and tackle and learn from experts like you about AI's impact on society. So for our first question, how do you see AI shaping either the industries around you, obviously with the viewpoint that you would have at Salesforce, or economy at large? How do you see AI shaping that right now, the biggest areas that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, obviously, I think the impact of AI is already immense and it's growing. At Salesforce, we're very deep, as you know, into the world of Agentic AI, or sort of Agentforce suite of products. And a recent survey, we saw 90% of enterprise IT leaders are planning to deploy AI agents in the next 2 years. So let's pause and think about that. Think about that sort of economic transformation, the transformation of the way we do business. AI agents, as you know, are able to take action, often autonomously, within guardrails, right? Suite of different actions. It could be helping with customer service. It could be personalizing and extending marketing campaigns, helping employees with self-service. And that kind of suite of activities is tremendous. I often go back to thinking about where we were in the early days of the internet. I'm gonna date myself, but like I do remember these early websites that were super clunky. And it might have been hard at the time to imagine what was going to happen to the economy and how the internet would open up not only new forms of commerce, but new forms of communication, new forms of us connecting with each other as humans, and so on. And I think we're on the brink of an even bigger transformation as we think about the agent to agent economy, right? Of agents transacting with other agents on our behalf or agents executing things on our behalf. And that can do incredible things for businesses and for people. But obviously, as we're here to talk about, it also requires guardrails and trust at the center of that and really putting people at the center of that transformation, which is what I spend a lot of time thinking about and acting on.
Yeah, this agentic AI, both present and increasing vision for the future. I get so many questions about it that people are very excited, but also a little bit scared about it as well. The excitement is from the mundane tasks that people already feel like, oh yeah, if something was able to handle that for me, and then that would tie together with this other thing. And they definitely see the vision of it's not just single agents, it's about this ecosystem of agents. And so there is
Yeah,
excitement there. But then the concern about we already don't fully have a great understanding of preventing like bias in existing AI and generative AI models. And now we're going to pile them on top of each other, essentially, that there's questions around that. So leads to the next question then.
yeah.
Is it specific to agentic AI that there might be existing ethical or regulatory challenges we need to be tackling now? Or do you feel a lot of the existing ethical and regulatory questions that we're already asking now will be similarly applied to agentic AI? Tell us a little bit
I
about your.
do. Yeah, I do. I think, and this kind of gives me a lot of hope to think about it this way, which is we're not starting from scratch, and there have been literally decades of work on questions of topics like bias or privacy, and even thinking about, for example, one strong regulatory imperative is these sort of higher risk use cases. So AI that is being used to determine people's life outcomes for jobs or for credit decisions or so on. Those require higher levels of investment and higher levels of guardrails around that. And I think continuing to have clarity on that, even with agentic AI, is really, really important. It's also very important as we have different countries passing regulation, different states, and so on, that there's an interoperable layer. That is to say, that there's a consistent way to understand what good means at the business level, at the consumer level, at the societal level. So all of that, I think, remains true. And I would have given you that same answer 5 years ago. I think what's different though, is actually what you started off with, right? There's a lot of hope and there's a little bit of fear. This is the time that it's really important for people to really take control of that AI journey and to understand what these guardrails look like. So, for example, in our agent suite of products, we have a whole series of guardrails that allow you to constrain the topics that an agent will answer, or to test to make sure you're getting the right results, to think about how you might vary a series of tests for different outcomes to make sure you're not getting toxic results, like in things that might offend people, all of that. Um, and I think those sorts of tests, that type of understanding is going to become easier and easier and more commonplace. Maybe in the past, we were used to thinking about AI as something very technical, and it's becoming something very accessible in our day to day lives. And it's so important that people feel not that it's something happening to them, but it's something that they're controlling, that they have agency over. And that's really critical as we get into the world of agents, because we're essentially delegating. We're delegating tasks to agents, right? So we need to know how to manage them. And that kind of literacy, I think, is going to become very, very critical to trustworthy outcomes.
Well, I think our listeners and viewers will be very happy to hear that reusing, building on existing expertise, knowledge, research, and frameworks is possible in this agentic AI future. I know many people worry that, oh no, I have to figure out a whole new thing, which sounds costly, labor intensive, and new. It raises new questions. And so being able to say, no, we're building on top of this expertise. We're augmenting these frameworks, I think, is massively important. But I really like that you're pointing out about human agency and control. I would argue that, yes, as we delegate more, the importance of human oversight, that human in the loop, however we're defining it, because I know it's not humans in the loop for every single decision, but that who is
Yeah,
accountable for designing these technologies, where they'll be used. How do we test them? Like you said, we have to test that they're working as intended,
100%.
test that they're not causing harm or reinforcing negative stereotypes or things like this. So all those things, like humans, we still have a role, but we need to make sure that we're building on top of that expertise instead of reinventing the wheel on top of things that, no, there's already a lot of great learnings there. So yeah, I think people will be very happy to hear you as an expert seeing this across so many different companies say that it's okay. And it's okay to use technologies like yours, Agent Force, that already come with guardrails and people understanding that they're not alone. There's frameworks, there's tools out there to help them.
1,000%.
So what does this agentic AI then future look like? So you're saying that this is the exciting technology we're working on. What will that allow us to do differently? In 2050, how do you see businesses changing, our lives changing? Do we now all just have leisure time at all time and we're not doing anything? What world then are we creating for 2050?
This is such a great question, Jen. And I've been around technology long enough to know that any attempt to like define 25 years from now, I'm going to fall flat on my face. But here's what I'll say. I'll say two things in response to the question. One is I was talking with a colleague, Silvio Savarese, who's our head of AI research, and he was showing me these incredible slides of images of what our streets looked like in the United States before commercial automobiles were introduced. And then images of how they changed once we had a system to manage commercial automobiles with like streetlights and stop signs and pavement and so on, what lane, everything like that, right? And then he sort of fast forwarded to what would our streets look like with just autonomous cars,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's a different set of controls and guardrails and systems, right? So I don't know exactly what that system of sets and controls look like when we have agents interacting with other agents at scale, and even think about other advances in AI like robotics and so on. I think it's a fair bet to say that these things will become more and more pervasive in our lives. They will become cheaper. They will become more and more powerful. Um, but I do think we have a choice in that future, right? That is not preordained. And that's my second point, right? I think we have a choice right now to choose a future where we, so to speak, have humans at the helm of that transformation, where we center it on people and human potential, where we actively prepare people and their literacy around AI, around how they can leverage AI to get better outcomes for their businesses, their organizations, their governments, and so on. Or we can choose to sort of sit back and let this future happen to us, which I do not. I don't want that future, right? I want a world in which we are all active stakeholders to the point about agency, that we're designing those incentives and that we're using technology to unleash human potential.
And I think that's massively important that it's not just control, because people might consider, oh, control is something I only have like in my workplace when I'm using AI, but it's choice of how we use this technology. It's in our personal lives, in our professional lives. But that choice also involves what you've mentioned now a couple of times, literacy, helping people
Mhm.
understand both their roles, the technology. We're not training everyone to be AI engineers, but there's so much about this technology that is accessible that allows us to make choices, have control over, decide how, where, and whether to use it in particular use cases. And so seeing those tie together, literacy allows for choice, which allows then for control, and allowing
Mhm.
people and encouraging them to acknowledge that. Because I do have to say, some media attention or hype implies that these things are going to happen to us. But all of
Right.
these things are being designed by humans. They are things that humans are making choices about. So be part of that to get both the
Yeah.
benefits, but also inform those guardrails. I want to cut through some of that kind of implications that we don't have control, we don't have choices, because we do. And it's about using it every day in an informed way.
Use the word literacy, but I also think another important word is confidence,
Hmm.
right? So you play around with AI tools, kind of get a good sense of where they're giving you answers that are fit and where you might want to like tweak and retweak the prompt and get a better answer, right? And that type of fluency, understanding how AI is used and leveraged to turbocharge your work, whether you're inside a company or you're in a nonprofit or whatever it is you're doing, that type of confidence, that's, I think, what we need, right? And that's, I think, how businesses get the best outcomes because they're sort of setting priorities for how to use AI, and they're also letting innovation flourish amongst their employees. And that sort of marriage of like that type of bottom up, top down innovation is where we, I think, see the best outcomes and where we get redesigned workflows that really drive the best results.
Yeah, no, that's exactly true. And I can't help using this as the stepping stone to the next part then that as we talk about making people confident in using technology, it's a phased approach to building that confidence. It's playing with it first, finding a few use cases, maybe getting used to it in your personal life, and then finding those use cases in professional lives. And when I talk to people, especially more senior people who expect their technical teams to know all about this and help drive part of that AI strategy. And I'm saying, no, like as leaders, as C suite members, you need to have some of that confidence, comfort with this technology to build the ideas, think about where your strategy is going.